In this video, I'm going to teach you a method that I used myself. I came up with it about 3 years ago and I started using it, and I dare say that I attribute most, if not all, of my success in business to this specific method. Now, in this video, I'm actually going to show you specifically how it's done. It's fairly easy. I'm going to give you an example of it as well. It's very, very easy to implement, and I promise you this, if you really use this method, it will probably change your daily practices, and it will be the first and maybe the most important step you'll ever take towards actually becoming a successful entrepreneur, or whatever it is you want to have success with, breaking out of mediocrity. Please subscribe to this channel, press the little bell icon. I promise you I will only make videos that have value to you. Let me just give you a tiny bit of background here. About 3 years ago, I finally got my green card. I had moved to the US. I had waited about a year and a half to get my work permit, to get my green card. I finally arrived in the mail. That's not how it works, but anyways. And I got a job at a translation company. I was also at the time looking to write a novel, actually to finish a novel I'd been working on for a couple of years. I was also starting to get into acting, and I really enjoyed that. However, one day I had the feeling, actually quite often I had this feeling, that I'm working all the time. I am working my ass off. I'm just working all day long doing the translations, which was really just my bread and butter, which was, of course, what paid my rent and, you know, my everyday living expenses, etc. But I got this weird feeling that I'm not really making progress with the novel. So I started implementing the system, and here's the system. It's extremely simple, and I'm going to show you how it looks on paper in a second, but just hear me out first. Every time you do an activity, you write down in a dedicated book or a dedicated document on your laptop or on your phone or wherever, you write down how long you spend on that specific activity. Now, we're not including leisure activity here, like watching movies with my girlfriend. That you don't put that on your list. Let me explain what I mean by telling you what my priorities were back when I finally got my green card and I started working here in the US. My first priority, of course, was to be able to pay my rent. I had a second aspiration, which was get in shape, look good, become more buff, so I spent a lot of time in the gym. That was also a goal of mine at the time. My third priority was, and this is in no particular order, maybe the order should actually be reversed. My third priority was to write a novel, to finish this novel I'd been working on for years already. My fourth and final bigger goal at this point in time was to become an actor, to actually be in real movies in Hollywood. Now, at one point I had this weird feeling that I feel like I'm working all the time. I'm working my ass off. I'm working so hard. I'm also partying, doing some partying and stuff, getting some new friends, of course, and that's all fine and dandy, but I don't really feel like I'm spending a lot of time on the things that I really wanted to, writing the novel, acting, primarily those two things. So I started writing down in a dedicated document how I spent my time. So, for instance, I would write translation, where I could just write work 6 hours. Monday work 6 hours. Novel 0 hours. I'm going to show you an example in a second, but the realization I had was, of course, that I hardly spent any time, at least not looking at the big picture, like if you put it into a pie chart or something like that. It was embarrassingly, painfully obvious to me how wrong my priorities were. Now, here's the trick. Once you start doing this, once you start seeing how you prioritize your time completely wrong, it will be easy to make the change. What I did was, and of course I was so privileged that I worked from home with the translation job I had, but what I did was I simply promised myself every morning I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna spend at least 1 hour, working on one of the projects that I do for me. One of the projects that can and could and actually did become my ticket out of mediocre life. So and of course add to that rule, if you're doing that, so in this case, for instance, I would get up, I would start writing on my novel. Once I'd been working on that for 1 hour, if I felt like, oh, I could keep writing, I would always just do that. And it was fairly interesting what happened. It was really an eye-opener. I realized, and I don't remember the specific numbers, but I realized that I spent something like 92% of my time just working to pay rent, maybe making a little more that I did put aside. So that's a good thing. We can talk about that in another video. But I more or less spent almost all my time working on what just satisfied my immediate needs right now, to pay rent, to be able to buy some clothes every now and then, to buy food, simply to survive. But that's not going to make you a millionaire. That's not going to make you a successful entrepreneur. And we already know that. Okay, let's have a look at the concrete example, how it might actually look. So this is a document I made for the purpose of this video, but it actually looks very much like the original document that I used to use myself. As you can see, this is week 1. This example, this is the day of the week, this is the activity we're talking about, and all the various activities that I am working on are listed here, and these are the hours spent. So as you can see here, Monday I spent 9 hours working, and I would always count the commute in that as well, at least if you're not exploiting the commute to learn something or somehow work on something that is also one of your goals. As you can see, writing, no writing Monday. Workout, I did get that in there because I did prioritize that. Business, I was also looking to open a business. I spent 0 hours on that. And as you can see here, it continues. And I write in all my hours. I simply just punch them in as they happen. Here's another workout session. Here I spend half an hour on some business. Here I spend 15 minutes on writing, etc., etc. But here's the interesting part. The total, the sum total down here. So during this entire week, I spent 45 hours working. Simply just making money to get by. I spent 2.75 hours writing, which was my major ambition at this time. I spent 9.5 hours working out, and I spent 3 hours on the business I wanted to start. So let's just look at it. Like, in terms of long-term success, what would you say, just from the top of your mind, which one of these are the most important ones to focus on? I would probably go with business or writing, followed by workout, maybe. But still, 45 hours versus 9.5, the second least important one, less than 3 hours writing and less than 3 hours on starting a business. This is all wrong. The priorities should be, and I'm going to say it as it is, completely reversed. And of course, you cannot necessarily, you cannot ignore the fact that, but maybe you're thinking like, if you have to reverse these, you can't just not work. No, you cannot not work. And what does that mean, logically? Well, that means that you're probably going to have to start working way more than 90 hours a week. And that's just a fact that you have to accept if you want to be a successful entrepreneur. Now, my advice to you is you do this. You implement the system for a couple weeks. Doesn't have to be longer than that. If you find that you can continue with it for even longer. I continued with it for almost 3 years. It was actually first at the beginning of 2018 I realized I don't really need this system anymore. And I think I could have probably made that decision earlier that I didn't need the system. But it was so helpful. It was so empowering. There was such a mismatch between what I told people when I met people and they would ask me, "Oh, so what do you do?" I would say, "Oh, I'm an actor. I'm a writer. I do work for a translation company as well." But honestly, am I even entitled to say that if I only spend 2% of my working hours working on a novel and 98 on my regular job? That's an open question, of course, but I dare you implement this system. Let me know in the comments below how you fare once you've implemented this system. I would love to hear. Also, I would love to hear, what is your goal? What is your real actual goal? What are the projects you're working on that might turn into a golden ticket? Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video.